New report shows the Secret Service requested emergency funding weeks ago.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. This is Logan Sekulow. Will Haynes joining us in studio as well. And we'll have Jeff Balaban joining us live from Israel as a very interesting report that came out of Israel today over a very interesting way that they were able to take out a lot of the Hamas militants, soldiers. It was pretty interesting. We'll get to that a bit later in the broadcast, but we did want to start off, Will, with some news. A big report that came out that actually showed that the White House had requested more Secret Service.
That's right. So this is what is being labeled an anomaly request. It was an unusual request, but the White House's Office of Management and Budget submitted a so-called anomaly request to congressional committees in August. And this was obviously before the second attempt on President Trump's life. And they warned in this request that without some flexibility to ratchet up Secret Service spending soon, the Secret Service would have, quote, insufficient resources to sustain and enhance protective operations. So almost a foreshadowing of what was to come with this request to Congress. Now, that still leaves a lot of questions out there, like why was the golf course not a hardened target and allowing someone to get that close?
There is a lot of questions that are coming out of this. Obviously, the shooter had to have known a bit more information than was publicly available.
Right.
Also. So there's all that. How did he know where he was going to be golfing, when he was going to be golfing? We know that he was in the area. They said like when I watched the press conference yesterday, they said very close proximity to where he was found for hours and hours. At least they went from 12 hours to 11 hours plus.
Right.
So somewhere around 12 hours scoping out this location. I highly doubt someone's just like, well, randomly, I'm going to stand here and just wait. There had to be a knowledge that, at least you would think so, that President Trump was there, why he was there, and that he'd be playing golf in that moment. But when you have these situations where the Secret Service and really even the White House said, hey, we need to ramp up, and it just hasn't been done yet, it does throw a lot of questions in the air.
That's right. And as you see members of Congress, even some from the very far left, like Ro Khanna, speaking out and having a op-ed in the Washington Post this morning that reads, "Protect Trump, whatever the cost," you have to wonder why it's only money that they need to be able to protect the former president. Why can't they, knowing what has already happened, and now this second round, how is there not the ability to move resources and shore up protection for the leading candidate for president on the Republican ticket? It seems, yes, I understand the need for resources and funding, but I don't think just dollars alone are going to fix the problem that's happening at the Secret Service.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Let's take some phone calls later in the broadcast, so I want to hear from you. Give me a call, 1-800-684-3110. Do you have thoughts on this, opinions on this with the Secret Service, on how they're doing? I mean, there was a lot of, obviously, praise that the Secret Service was able to stop this shooter, unlike the last time, where the Secret Service, though, ended up protecting the president in theory. There was some mass failures that happened the first time around. This time, even though he was there, and there do seem to be some very interesting questions to ask and some big gaps, they were able to stop this shooter without him ever putting off a round. So good on you, Secret Service. At least there was some positive to say about this, but it does make you question the entire process of how we're doing this. And the Secret Service even said that yesterday, which was, we've been doing this for decades and decades, but maybe it's time for us to take a new look at how we protect presidents and former presidents. It's a pretty interesting time. Look, phone lines are open at 1-800-684-3110. And as I said yesterday, new ACLJ champions, those that become monthly supporters on a recurring basis, your first gift is now doubled. It's a very cool new feature that we're able to offer. I'm excited about that. That means we have a matching donor on the other side ready to match your initial donation. So become a brand new champion today at aclj.org. As I said, phone lines are open at 1-800-684-3110.
The Biden administration is asking Congress to increase Secret Service funding following yesterday's events in Florida. Multiple sources tell CBS News the Office of Management and Budget has submitted a so-called anomaly request. That's a budget term even I didn't know, warning that the agency would have, quote, insufficient resources to increase its protective operations without additional funds.
One thing I want to make clear, the service needs more help, and I think the Congress should respond to their needs if they in fact need more services. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
The Secret Service cannot withstand keeping all of its funding flat because there are all these needs, as is evident from the attempted assassination in July, the arrest yesterday in Florida, and the burgeoning needs of the campaign.
They are deeply disturbed by this assassination attempt and are speaking out against political violence. Harris, in a statement, saying that they will ensure the Secret Service has every resource, capability, and protective measure necessary to carry out its critical mission.
I think it's pretty clear that the Secret Service needs an additional supplemental to help fund what they're trying to do now. It's going to be hard to get new agents to come in and trained in this. What do we have? 50-something days left. That's not a possibility. But there are additional resources that they have that they can bring to bear. I think some of that's classified. We want to make sure that there are no financial barriers to that.
There's just no great sense or consensus, Major, as to exactly what this agency needs in light of what's happened this summer and in light of the increasingly toxic political environment where violent political threats are becoming more common and more acute. This is going to define the next few weeks here in Washington, how they negotiate and stand up more money for Secret Service.
Welcome back to Sekulow. I am taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110, 1-800-684-3110. For those just joining us, we are talking about the fact that the Secret Service had requested emergency funding just a few weeks ago. And, Will, I wanted to break down not only what they did, but we were talking in the break about why it hasn't gone through yet, why it hasn't happened, as there is a government shutdown looming.
That's right. So they asked what they call an anomaly request to congressional committees back in August, and this was before this latest attempt on President Trump's life, but in light of the first attempt in Pennsylvania. And so what they were asking was that this supplementary funding be placed into the continuing resolution, which Congress is debating right now, because we are approaching a funding deadline of October 1st to keep the government open. So they were asking for this monetary package and funding package to go into this continuing resolution that Congress will be voting on. To me, I understand them at the time saying that Secret Service would have insufficient resources to sustain and enhance protective operations, but asking for that money in a continuing resolution doesn't get passed until October 1st, then you're a month away from the election. What I feel like should have been requested is that they go to Congress and ask for a standalone funding bill of Secret Service, of a supplementary package, similar to when you see like all the emergency packages of funding that they've done for Ukraine.
Yeah, why does that have to be stuffed in
things?
Something else?
Exactly. If you need it now, why are you saying just put it in your funding bill, which there's going to be a ton of fight over? The government could shut down, then you get none of that funding. Instead, ask for a supplementary funding bill that's a standalone bill saying, in light of the presidential election and the threat climate that we see, the Secret Service needs Congress to pass a bill that would help us in some way beef up security around the leading candidate for president, President Trump. I understand that they're going to try to say, look, we had a situation where we were protecting the sitting U.S. president, and he was also one of the candidates, and then we have the former U.S. president, which is a candidate, so that's a strain on resources, but then you have a switcheroo, and now we have a new candidate for president, the vice president.
They were already protecting her. So, I feel like that's an excuse here. We've been protecting former presidents for a long time. Now, and it obviously is a different threat level when you're talking about a former president actively running for president.
Right.
Plus, you had Secret Service at some point for a very brief period, the Secret Service that was going to RFK, post-assassination attempt, that was withdrawn once he stepped down and ended his campaign. But now you have this situation where President Trump has had multiple assassination attempts. He still has a couple months of, how many days out are we from the election? 55-ish, probably from the election. I'm going to say round number, somewhere around there. So like you said, a long time to do it. They've requested more funding, but in typical Washington fashion, they have to tie it up in some other, situation. They have to make it pork in one of these bills.
Right, and we are 48 days. I had to look it up real quick, but 48 days from the election. But here's also the other thing, is you look at, that the government loves to spend money.
Of course.
They're asking for more money, even if it passed today. How does just more dollars
really
at this point, because if they don't have enough agents, they don't have enough resources,
then train people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at a lag time of being able to beef up security. I feel like this should have been done months ago, if not even sooner, in looking ahead at this. At the same time, you have the criticism that the FBI and other agencies, once again, probably should have had this person on their radar, as they like to say many times after a mass shooting, a mass casualty event, that they knew.
You can't imagine that he wasn't.
Well, right, because the
radar.
Wall Street Journal put out this morning that U.S. authorities were warned about suspected Trump gunmen, not specifically that he was going to try to assassinate President Trump, but of all the activities that he was doing in Ukraine, looking at human smuggling across borders, trying to buy passports. This is someone with his 100+ encounters with law enforcement, him being convicted of having a weapon of mass destruction when he barricaded himself in his former workplace with a machine gun, fully automatic machine gun, back 20 years ago.
100 is a lot.
100 encounters with law enforcement, and yet this man is still able to freely travel to Ukraine, move about the country, live in Hawaii, get all the way to Florida, with somehow obtain a weapon. That's part of the charges, that it has a serial number scratched off.
You can't drive from Hawaii to Florida.
In general.
In general. It's just not possible. We don't have that technology. So it wasn't like he was somewhere on the West Coast and had these weapons and traveled. Somehow he was able to leave his home state, acquire a weapon, or worst case scenario, probably get through the airport with that get this weapon without being caught and make his way down to Florida, literally crossing the entire country. We don't know how long he was in the state of Florida. That hasn't been, I believe, revealed yet.
And I assume that we will, as these days go on, get more press briefings as more information comes to light. You and I were watching that press briefing yesterday afternoon, though, and we're kind of let down by the forthcomingness of the investigators, whether it be the U.S. attorney, the sheriff of the county, and the FBI field agent that were there, because nothing they said was new information that hadn't already been reported for 3 or 4 hours prior to them going up to the podium. At that point, they have to have more information, but the reporters already had been told it by someone within these agencies. It raises once more, how tight-knit is this community? How well are they able to conduct an investigation when all the information they're bringing to a press briefing, someone else within some agency has already told the press hours before?
Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot of information, and they were getting very snarky with them.
Right.
If they were asking questions, they thought, yelling and screaming. It's like you just never dealt with press like this. Let's go to phones. Let's go to Eric, who's calling in North Carolina on line 3. Eric, you're on the air.
If it is,
let's put Eric back on hold. We'll try to get to him, and we'll continue on. We'll get to some more calls here coming up. Check on Eric, though. Eric had a good call. If you want to give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. I also wanted to tell you, again, we have a lot of work going on right now at the ACLJ. We're going to break down some of that coming up a little bit later in the broadcast. I also am teasing, yes, we have Jeff Balaban coming on, and you may have seen this. There was an interesting way that Israel is currently fighting, and it is a way that I've never heard of. It is very unique. It is taking out quite a bit of the troops there, if you will, the Hamas militants. So it's pretty interesting to watch. We're going to talk about that coming up in Lebanon. So let's go ahead and take a phone call again. We're going to try one more time. Eric, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning. Anyway, Hey, I had a quick question about the Secret Service and this, heat detection kind of technology in 2024. Why they don't seem to have it, or they're not using it, or to the degree that they should have it?
Yeah, Eric, I think that they do have access to a lot of this technology. One of the reasons we know this is because the way they were able to track that 12 hours was to ping his cell phone to see where his cell phone was for that day, and it had been in the area of Trump International. So they do have some access to that. When it comes to apprehending him, I do think there is obviously a hope and a want to de-escalate, to actually bring him in alive, which we did. It will be fascinating to actually find out if they can get more information of what brings someone to this point. What do they do? Because this is not usual. Usually, even in the situation of Lee Harvey Oswald, you didn't get to the point. He obviously survived initially, but did not get to the point of really being able to answer a lot of the questions we all have.
That's right. And as we saw yesterday, or saw reports of yesterday, he was laughing in court. They said he was smiling. He seemed coherent, answering the judge's questions, so they didn't believe that there was a situation where he wasn't of sound mind for court purposes. Yeah. Clearly, if you are an attempted assassin, you are not of sound mind for humanity's purposes. Yeah. But he was laughing and joking with his court-appointed attorney. But on top of that, he stopped cooperating when they took him in, as his constitutional rights to do, requested the lawyer, and was not answering questions with the authorities at that time. So we will see as the investigation goes on what happens, how they are able to get information out of him, with him being an alive perpetrator, which many times is not the case in these type of scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to, again, take a minute before we get to break here and tell you about the work of the ACLJ, because right now we've got a lot of legal cases happening right now. You know about our cases for the whistleblowers. You've heard about our support of the Green Party right now, trying to get on the ballots, making sure that you're able to vote for whoever you want. They've targeted our colleague, that Tulsi Gabbard. We've been talking with her about putting her on that terror watch list, the Quiet Skies watch list. And we are fighting a lot of these cases all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the bottom line is, they're going to come after us. We got to make sure we're able to get a response in appropriately, and that we're able to do it in the best way possible. We can't have the best of the best team, the best media team, the best legal team, without your support. And the most effective way to do that, to give us just an incredible baseline, is to become an ACLJ champion. That's someone that gives on a monthly recurring basis, and all brand new champions. Look, there's over 21,000, and close to 22,000 of you now. Join them, and your first gift is doubled. If you tweeted this morning, you put, "One thing is beyond clear. President Trump is not getting the protection he needs, and there needs to be a full investigation." We know Congress already investigating the first attempt. What angles do you think they should be looking at it now, knowing that this would-be assassin was able to get so close once again to President Trump?
Whatever it is they did in the aftermath of the first attempt, what they're working on today is insufficient to protect President Trump. And I say this broadly. I suspect they're not doing enough for others who are under threat as well. I want Vice President Harris to be protected too. When someone can get, after you've had a first assassination, when someone get within several hundred meters of the former president at a private golf facility, that is a demonstration of a failed leadership and process inside the Secret Service, inside DHS, and frankly, ultimately the responsibility falls to President Biden. This is not about politics. This is about the fundamental obligation to have a candidate for president of the United States be able to go out, campaign, live his life, have his family live their life, and do so without the risk that some crazy guy or someone who is acting on behalf of a foreign government, either way, or a terrorist, befalls our nation with an absolute tragedy. I'm so happy President Trump is safe, happy for him and for his family, but I'm also happy for our nation that is now just seeing the inability of the United States government to perform its most basic institutional functions. And so I hope not only will Congress investigate, I hope the state of Florida will, and then most importantly, I hope that these investigations will be released so that the American people can see that the mistakes that were made, if any, and those who were responsible for those mistakes held accountable, and that there's corrective action put in place so we can be confident that our leaders can travel and campaign and meet with their constituents and their voters.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Cece Heil, senior counsel, is joining us in studio. But, Will, we wanted to discuss this. As we know, these assassination attempts now keep happening. We're now onto the second confirmed one. And who knows how many things that they are stopping, that the Secret Service is stopping, or that we know that threats are happening. I'm sure every day there are these kind of threats, but maybe they get more and more amplified as time has moved on. But it also seems like the FBI, on the other hand, is spending their time wasting their time going after the wrong people.
That's right. And even Governor DeSantis, in his comments about this, were saying that it's not in the best interest of our state or nation to have the same federal agencies that are seeking to prosecute Donald Trump leading the investigation into his would-be assassination attempt. And we have been at the ACLJ a long time pushing back and digging to uncover what these agencies are doing in their targeting specifically of conservatives. It's become what appears to be an obsession of these agencies to go after conservatives and people with conservative ideology, whether that be your Christian faith, whether that be being a pro-life individual, or any of the other things that you associate with conservatism. And Cece, we filed a FOIA back in January of this year, and this was specifically related to reports that came out that they were flagging financial transactions. The FBI was, that included the word MAGA, Trump, Bible, people that had shopped at places like Dick's Sporting Goods or Bass Pro Shop. Whenever we say the Dick's Sporting Goods ones, people are like, oh, those are probably liberals anyways. But people that are doing outdoor activities, they were flagging financial transactions of these individuals to investigate them, whether or not they were radicalized domestic terrorists.
Right.
And we actually got a partial victory in some of this because, as many people know, we have to fight a long time with these agencies, go to court to get them to give over the documents we know they have.
Yeah.
And we got an internal victory here just yesterday with this one. So it's a partial victory.
Yeah.
And go ahead and tell our audience about it a little bit.
You know, everybody will remember that it was the banking institutions that the FBI and the Treasury Department were literally using financial institutions for unconstitutional targeting of conservatives, just like you said. So when we sent out our FOIA, it was because the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee had come across an actual report. And this report was titled Domestic Violent Extremists Likely Emboldened in Aftermath of Capitol Breach. And that report was shared with these financial institutions for the purpose of alerting private sector partners of the January 6th violent breach by suspected domestic violent extremists in the U.S. Capitol building. And it would serve as a driver for a diverse set of what they call the domestic violence extremists. And again, we saw that those people are the people that maybe have MAGA or a Bible or shop at a sporting goods store. And so we had asked for that report specifically. We wanted to see that report, and we got denied. Now, you have to go through an administrative appeal when you do FOIA requests, and so we appealed administratively, and you are correct. We did get a response back from the Administrative Appeals Department saying that they have looked at our appeal, and they're actually remanding our request to the FBI for a further search for responsive records to that specific report that we asked for.
That's right. So effectively what you have here is the FBI, as per usual with these government agencies, tries to stonewall the ACLJ and say, we're denying your request. Normally, we have to get it finally into court to end up getting them. So the fact that we sent this FOIA in January, and now internally, this one record that is pivotal to other angles of this investigation, the FBI internally is saying you have to go back and look for it and start producing that to the ACLJ. That's a good step because we're going to start getting that a lot faster. There are other, angles to this that we will have to go to court and fight for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is something with the ACLJ, with our work and our legal work, I think people need to understand that goes beyond this broadcast that we do each and every day. It goes on talking points and rhetoric, and we're discussing the Secret Service, we're discussing the FBI, but we're actually getting ourselves involved in a way that a lot of organizations and a lot of, like, if you watch this broadcast, I know thousands of you watch, just on YouTube, there's almost 430,000 of you that watch this broadcast. You may not know the legal side of this. You may just tune in kind of for your news. And we do want to make sure we cover what's happening in the world. But we also, what's happening in the world is something we're also deeply involved in.
Right. Absolutely. And you know, it goes to the point of, yes, the House of Representatives and the Judiciary Committee uncovered this information, but we need to go further. And that's what we do at the ACLJ, especially with these FOIA requests, is we want to know how this report came about. What are the communications? What are the emails? Who's the first person who actually said, hey, this is who we need to look after. We need to go after Christians. We need to go after Catholics. We need to go after people that have bought a Bible or went to a sporting goods, store, right, or have MAGA. And so we want to get to the bottom of it and actually hold those people accountable.
That's right. And you can support the work of the ACLJ right now. I'm going to encourage you to do that. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But when you hear CC, one of our senior counsel, I mean, that's one of hundreds of people that are working on these, either the show or our legal side. There's kind of two wings of the ACLJ, if you will, our media advocacy and our legal advocacy, and they're going simultaneously and working together. There's some on different floors here, and that's about it. There's people working all together on making sure that your rights are protected. We can't do that without your support. As we head into the second half hour of this broadcast, I want to encourage you. You've heard about currently the situation we're working on with the FBI. You have heard about whether it's our clients or our friends like Tulsi Gabbard and how we are helping and protecting them. You've heard about even our response, because it is for everybody. When you have a situation where President Trump was taken off the ballot in Colorado, we had to fight back against it. Now we're representing the Green Party. And you may go, why is that happening? You're happening because it is not unlike a lot of organizations and a lot of people that just may be able to just, wave one political flag, and that's what we do. No, we believe the rights are for everyone. And that's protecting your religious liberties. That's protecting your freedoms and your values to vote and your ability to vote for the candidate of your choice. And we can't do any of that incredible work without you, our ACLJ supporters. Most of our gifts come in as individual donations. Those people that give one time or give one time in a year. And that's great. If you're one of those people, fantastic. I appreciate it. Those that give $10, $25, $50, whatever it be, fantastic. We obviously encourage you to do that. But this month, right, really this week, we introduced a brand new way to become an ACLJ champion. And we say champion, we mean those that give on a monthly recurring basis. That's right. You can kind of set it and forget it. Of course, you can cancel at any time. It's tax deductible. You can give a gift, though, of any level and become an ACLJ champion. Again, that's someone who says, I am dedicated to giving to the organization each and every month. And what's very cool and what's brand new for new champions, look, there's almost 22,000 champions, is that your first gift, whatever it may be, whether it's $5 or $5,000 or more, whatever it may be, we have matching donors ready to match that first gift, which is brand new. That is something we've only started yesterday, and it's exciting. So I encourage you right now, go to aclj.org. or scan the QR code that's on the screen. We have a second half hour coming up. If you don't get us on your local radio broadcast, and a lot of you listen on terrestrial radio, some of you only get 30 minutes of the show. We broadcast live each and every day on aclj.org, on YouTube, on Rumble, on X. We are there. Just search for ACLJ. You'll find us. And, of course, you can get us later on the podcast version of Sekulow. So make sure you find us whatever way you get the broadcast. And if you're looking for it live, it's each day from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern time. You can work your way back from there. Stay on hold if you're on hold. We're going to get to your calls. We got a couple lines open at 1-800-684-3110. We'll be right back. Just a 1-minute break.
Some people think champions are bored, that it's a title that requires something only a handful can ever possess.
There are times in our lives that we are called, every one of us, to step up and serve a cause greater than ourselves.
Even when the loudest voices in the room say it's wrong, that it can't be done. It can be a difficult stand, but it's one any of us can make, including you.
You can be the change. You can make that difference.
You can be a champion. We cannot do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty, a champion of freedom.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today.
Keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome back to Sekulow. This is Logan Sekulow. Will Haynes joining me in studio. We're going to kick things off because we have a lot of calls coming in. And I want to take some calls, and then in the next segment, we're going to take us to Israel. We're going to have Jeff Balaban joining us live from Israel to discuss sort of some of the new tactics that Israel is doing right now to hopefully end this war. Let's go ahead and take some phone calls, though. Todd's calling from Georgia on line 2. Todd, you're on the air.
Hey, yes. My question is about DHS and their role with the Secret Service. Mayorkas, we've seen what TSA has done to Tulsi Gabbard, and I'm furious that they can give away millions of smartphones to illegal aliens and almost $1 trillion, but they can't manage one lousy drone for rooftop surveillance or surveilling a golf course perimeter. That is outrageous.
And Todd, I think that some senators in the U.S. Congress also have issues with that as well. Obviously, the Department of Homeland Security is the parent agency of the Secret Service. It used to be a Treasury agency, but a few years ago was moved under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security. There's actually been a lot of criticism of that move by commentators as well as members of Congress. But I'm going to play this bite from Senator Josh Hawley, because at the end of the day, a lot of this does stem from the failed leadership of Alejandro Mayorkas, who we know what he's done with the border crisis. We know what TSA has been doing, targeting our colleague Tulsi Gabbard. And this is some of the insight that Josh Hawley, as a member of the Senate investigating the failures of the Butler attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. Let's take a listen to Bite 5.
What whistleblowers have told me, Bill, is that over a series of years, Secret Service leadership has steadily reduced the number of agents available in the field. They are now having to rely more on Homeland Security agents who are not trained. One of the whistleblower revelations is that most of the agents in Butler that day in July were not Secret Service, and they weren't trained. They had never done protective work before. Their only training was a webinar, a Zoom call. It's this pattern that is so troubling, and I think what we're finding is Secret Service just doesn't appear to be prepared to do their job. And the fact that both Secret Service and DHS are slow walking, if not stonewalling, congressional investigations is totally unacceptable and raises a whole bunch more questions.
And that bite came before this assassination attempt. They had been given that information last week that we saw Senator Blumenthal was concerned. He was said Americans will be outraged, shocked, appalled at what happened in Pennsylvania. Josh Hawley, a part of those same committees, getting some of the same briefings. When you read that and hear that, it's very shocking.
I had not heard that they were untrained and had just been through a Zoom call and a webinar. That definitely shows you that things need to change. And when you saw the new head of the Secret Service yesterday saying, I think we need to take a look at how we're doing things, maybe that's the reason. He was in Washington, D.C. to discuss this, then went down. They said that was unlike the previous head, who never even showed up in Butler, Pennsylvania, that the new head of the Secret Service got on a plane, got down to Florida immediately. So at least taking some action. But when you see that action and you know that during these, a webinar and a Zoom call to be a Secret Service, quote unquote agent, not necessarily an agent, but I guess what would they even call it?
It's like you're getting CPR certified. You just watch a couple videos, watch a PowerPoint presentation, and it's like you're good to go.
Quiz,
good to go protect a
if you see someone with an assault rifle, what do you do? That's kind of what it feels like. I'm sure it's not quite that, but it doesn't make you feel very secure about what's happening. Hey, we will be back in just a moment. Stay on hold if you're on hold. We got a line open at 1-800-684-3110. You're going to want to stay tuned for this. This is in the war that Israel has right now in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and it is such a unique story. It's not something to laugh about, because obviously they are taking out the bad guys here. That is what's happening. But the way they were able to accomplish it, look, they're not taking credit for it. I think no comment is probably the official comment. But Hezbollah themselves have said, we believe this is a giant security breach that happened from Israel. So we're going to talk about that coming up. Very unique ways using technology to, you'll see. Just stay tuned, okay? I don't want to tease it out too much. I'm sure if you're watching online, you're probably going to see it at the break. We'll be right back.
Israel's government this morning set a new war goal, or rather new war goals, to include returning evacuated residents to the country's north amid near daily attacks from the Lebanon-based Hezbollah militant group.
Israelis are focused on one thing: bringing the hostages home.
I want them back now, but it takes time.
We just spoke to Gal Hirsch, the Israeli special coordinator for hostages and the missing. He's also a close ally of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And Hirsch today sidestepped those official channels and renewed and even broadened an offer to Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Israel will give him safe passage out of Gaza if Sinwar relinquishes control of the territory and returns all 101 remaining hostages.
Now I'm willing to bring an end to the war.
It's a proposal to Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. Israel says he was last sighted in Hamas security camera video from October, following his family through a tunnel.
We will be able to provide safe passage to him, his family, whoever he wants to take with him. If he wants to take 10, take 10. You want to take thousands, I don't care. Bring my people back home. You can leave. End of the war. And I think all the world is waiting.
Now, Sinwar is never seen in public. He is the most wanted man in the whole region, and he hasn't responded to this proposal. But in a communique to Houthi rebels earlier today, he sure doesn't sound like a man open to a deal. We have prepared to fight a long battle of attrition, he said in that message, that will break Israel's political will.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We are joined live by Jeff Balaban, who runs our ACLJ Jerusalem office, who is in Israel right now. Jeff, I wanted to bring up this story because it's very interesting. It was breaking this morning on the new kind of way that Israel has been going after, maybe, allegedly, yes. They've not taken credit, for going after Hezbollah fighters. And we know thousands of people were actually injured with this. And a few have died from this, and that is really taking it to technology. And that was that what appears to be hundreds of pagers, and these pagers were being used because cell phones, it seemed like, had become too unsecure for them because we knew they were tracking.
Well, and they took out the Hezbollah leader just weeks ago, and the report is that they had shifted to using a more antiquated technology, perhaps, of pagers, and that they have just introduced these to their fighting force, and all of a sudden, on this fateful day, hundreds of these pagers detonated.
Exploded. And we've seen the videos of them. It is a wild thing to watch. They had just acquired these pagers, and Hezbollah is saying this is one of the biggest security breaches of all time, but it is a very interesting look into the sort of modern / maybe antiquated way that Israel is having to fight back.
Yeah, well, first of all, as you say, Israel has not officially taken credit for this, but there is widespread sense that it is Israel. And people are very excited about this globally and here as well. It's a way to really targeted way of going after Hezbollah fighters, terrorists, who transferred over to using these pagers because of the use by Israel by hacking into a cell phone, using a cell phone. And the stories that are going around, unconfirmed, are that about 1,200 of these were siphoned through as an Israeli operation to Hezbollah. So it was really targeted specifically at terrorists in the most personal way, and then done in a beautiful way and brilliant way, if of course it was done by Israel. But put this in context, which is I know why we're having this discussion now, and put this in context for our viewers. I mean, this is because it's pretty clear that Israel feels the need to go on a major offensive in the north now. And Hezbollah is as evil and as much damage as Hamas has done and is. Hezbollah is much worse. It's worse, not morally, they're equally evil and genocidal, but they are more directly Iranian-backed. They have vast arsenals of weapons through a corridor that's been flowing straight through from Iran to them. They could reach all of Israel with targeted weaponry. There was just a report that that Hezbollah was trying to blow up an Israeli official using a Claymore mine they were going to remotely detonate that Israel foiled today. So this is a backdrop of a leading drumbeat to needing to move forward to take care of this threat from the north. Remember, a huge number of Israelis, tens of thousands, have been living as refugees within Israel since this war began almost a year ago because of the threat in the north by Hezbollah.
One of the things that we bring up in these situations that Israel does seem, though the conversation never gets there, they do intentionally go after the bad guys in these situations. This was another moment where this wasn't some mass event where they're going after people that the media wants you to believe. This was targeted directly at those fighting for Hezbollah. So again, squashing the narrative that this is some mass event where they are going after civilians.
That's 100% right, Logan. Look, the truth is that people use the words like war crimes and genocide and ethnic cleansing. Israel has the technological and just the pure munitions ability to have turned all of Gaza, all of Rafah, into glass. They could carpet bomb all of Lebanon. Yep. They're not. Not that there's not a threat, not that there aren't rockets launching from Lebanon every single day. Killing civilians, targeting civilians. Again, they can target. They're targeting schools. They're targeting just civilians in Israel. But Israel tries to fight a moral war. I mean, I guess this is a quote I heard a long time ago from my rabbi, and I think of it all the time. He said, this is the difference between people waging a holy war and a holy people waging war. And I think it's true that Israel tries very hard not to impress the world, because the world doesn't care, to try to limit casualties of non-combatants as best they can. And we see it in the results. The media is claiming otherwise, but there are fewer non-combatant deaths in the Gaza war than in any war in recorded history.
And Jeff, I wanted to bring this up because the New York Times has a new piece out today saying Hamas is surviving war with Israel. Now it hopes to thrive in Gaza again. And I want to draw the distinction of when you see if Israel is behind these actions that are taking place, whether it be the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh or these actions against Hezbollah in Lebanon, when Israel is allowed to do what Israel does best, it prevents a broader war because Iran, remember, was going to strike back with fire and fury and launch missiles in retaliation of the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. But when the media started reporting all of the security failures that Iran did, and the regime and the administration in Israel were saying, hey, if you do it, we are going to unleash everything we have against you. And now you see Hezbollah, who had failed attacks where they were mocked by the Arab world for killing chickens instead of Israelis in their trying to retaliate against Israel. And now Israel with a targeted, sophisticated attack on fighters of Hezbollah. When Israel is allowed to fight the way that they know how to fight against terrorists, it puts an end to broader war. Meanwhile, if this headline from the New York Times comes true, Hamas surviving the war with Israel, now it hopes to thrive in Gaza again, that's on the hands of the Biden administration and the Harris administration for tying the hands of Israel in being able to conduct warfare against the terrorists, the savage terrorists that exist in Gaza.
That's 100% correct. Well, look, the October 7th, I believe, and many believe, never would have happened had it not been for an opportune administration and the response, which was basically to side with Hamas, to side with those who started this war, not just Hamas, but those who live in Gaza, and to say, we're going to reward the Palestinian people with a state. That's the result. You kill, slaughter, murder, rape, torture, kidnap civilian Jews, Israelis. We're going to give you a state for that. And so the whole whole genocidal Islamist world woke up and said, great. And you see it in the streets of America even. You see it in the streets all around the West where this presence has come to exist. And Israel, which really is standing on the barricades for Western civilization here in the Jewish homeland, but really it's like an outpost of Judeo-Christian civilization, is the front line of a global war. All Israel wants to do, Israel would love to coexist with these neighbors. You see it, any Arab neighbor, Muslim neighbor willing to make peace, Israel leaps to make peace. But these people only want to eradicate Israel, and they say it openly. They want to wipe out Jews and they want to wipe out Christians. And that's where Israel stands in the breach. And so this moment today, and that report that you mentioned just now from the New York Times, the fact that they even say it like it's okay, the problem is they've stood in Israel's way of clearing out and toppling Hamas, and Hamas keeps on rearming, and that's why Israel has to stay there for the long haul, even as America is trying to push them out.
Last, Jeff, I just wanted to get your thoughts. You're in Jerusalem now, you're in Israel now at our ACLJ offices, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that we are headed towards a couple weeks away from the Jewish High Holy Days, of course, which in between will be the 1-year anniversary of the attack on October 7th. What is the mood? What is the feeling right now in Israel headed towards these times, which are, historically very reverent, but also become celebratory times?
Right. I mean, we consider this nationally to be the day of judgment for all humanity, and we pray for all humanity on the high holidays, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then we lead right into the holiday of Sukkot, of Tabernacles, which is a fully joyous holiday. And of course, it was decimated, the pain of it at the pinnacle, when we rejoice in God's giving us of the Torah and what happened at Mount Sinai. And it was a terrible, terrible day. It was also a Shabbat, a Sabbath. And so in Israel, it's called the Black Sabbath. And it's on everybody's mind. The one thing I would say is, I would first of all ask is that in addition to supporting the work we do here, pray for the peace of Israel, pray for the peace of the world. That's what we'll be doing on our high holy days. That's what we do every day, but especially at this time of the year, and especially conscious of the fact that this is a long haul war. As much pressure as people are putting on Israel to stop and get out, it simply cannot. This is truly existential, and the Israeli soldiers are fighting for all of us. And so please pray for Israel, pray for them, and this is the season of the year.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us again. As Jeff said, pray for Israel, pray for our people, pray for our offices there, and for obviously our team here as we continue our support of Israel, sometimes when it's not easy. And there are times when it's not easy because of public outcry or in the media narrative. But we are there for you, and we're there for Israel, and you can be a part of that as well. Go to aclj.org, stay updated, not just support the work. Obviously, financially, you can continue. It supports people like Jeff and our offices there. But obviously, stay informed. We do that here. We provide you incredible, great content. Jeff writes a lot. A lot of our team writes great content that's available on aclj.org, stuff that's very easy to share. I know it's hard to sometimes share a full hour broadcast with someone. But we clip it out. You can send clips. You can send articles that are by some of the leading names and professionals in this world. So be a part of that right now. Just go to aclj.org, visit. Maybe you can sign up for part of the email list that you get an email each and every day. It's a great way to stay engaged. And of course, you're watching on YouTube and Rumble. Subscribe. We'll be back with your calls at 1-800-684-3110.
The Biden administration is asking Congress to increase Secret Service funding following yesterday's events in Florida. Multiple sources tell CBS News the Office of Management and Budget has submitted a so-called anomaly request. That's a budget term even I didn't know, warning that the agency would have, quote, insufficient resources to increase its protective operations without additional funds.
One thing I want to make clear, the service needs more help, and I think the Congress should respond to their needs if they, in fact, need more services. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
The Secret Service cannot withstand keeping all of its funding flat because there are all these needs, as is evident from the attempted assassination in July, the arrest yesterday in Florida, and the burgeoning needs of the campaign.
They are deeply disturbed by this assassination attempt and are speaking out against political violence. Harris, in a statement, saying that they will ensure the Secret Service has every resource, capability, and protective measure necessary to carry out its critical mission.
I think it's pretty clear that the Secret Service needs an additional supplemental to help fund what they're trying to to do now. It's going to be hard to get new agents to come in and trained in this. What do we have? 50-something days left. That's not a possibility. But there are additional resources that they have that they can bring to bear. I think some of that's classified. We want to make sure that there are no financial barriers to that.
There's just no great sense or consensus, Major, as to exactly what this agency needs in light of what's happened this summer and in light of the increasingly toxic political environment where violent political threats are becoming more common and more acute. This is going to define the next few weeks here in Washington, how they negotiate and stand up more money for Secret Service.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Now it's time to take your phone calls. We want to hear your voice. You've heard from some leading experts. Now it's time to hear from the smartest people in the room, which are always you, our callers. Give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. We've got 2 lines open. If you want to be on the air, it's a great time to get in line, 1-800-684-3110. We'll go in order of those who've called in. And by the way, I didn't say this before. If you're an ACLJ champion, you tell our phone screener, you get priority selection here, so you could jump to the front. I don't know if any of you are, but you didn't tell him if it was. Let's go ahead and go to Ronald, who's calling in South Carolina, who is watching on Rumble, which is great, one of our favorite free speech platforms. Ronald, you're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. Enjoying your show. Just one caveat before I go into my comment, and that is that with what Will said earlier concerning agencies investigating this second attempt on Trump, hope it doesn't end up like a Lee Harvey Oswald. But now to my comment, though, and that is this. The second attempt that has been made on Trump, and yet the Harris and Biden have been saying that we must stop these types of hate speeches that's going on, but yet I have not heard an apology.
Right. It seems like this seems like the theory is to say we should lower the mood. We should lower the rhetoric and then not lower the rhetoric. That seems to be the common case. And look, this has been happening for a long time. The Trump campaign put out a whole list of times. And we can even go back to when Kamala Harris was on the Ellen show. Is it Ellen DeGeneres, I assume? Are we talking about here? So this was years ago at this point. This is how early it was. Let's go to Byte 16.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be? Does one of us have to come out alive?
So, I mean, obviously done in jest, but a lot of this is done in jest, and then it encourages the wrong people.
Well, and not only are they not taking responsibility for the rhetoric they've used, such as democracy is on the ballot, he's a threat to democracy. Remember the dark Brandon speech where Joe Biden stood before a red background and had this very dark tone about the threat of MAGA to America. But you're even seeing people in the media spin this not as the speech from the left that's dangerous, that it's still President Trump that's causing this. Tom Nichols, who's kind of a never-Trumper, used more of a moderate Republican historically, but definitely never-Trumper, wrote this for The Atlantic. Donald Trump is using another possible attempt on his life to inflame tensions in America, which is one more reason he should never be president again. So once again, he's had a second attempted assassination on his life. And this is blame the victim. It's President Trump's fault. If he weren't him, we wouldn't have to worry about this. And that's not just Tom Nichols. You're seeing it on MSNBC, across the media. It's Trump's fault for the assassins wanting to take his life.
Yeah, even Hillary Clinton yesterday, I believe, said he was a danger to our country and to the democracy. You know, all the normal rhetoric, right back at it. Let's go ahead and continue on. Thank you for your call. Let's go to Jill, who's calling in Connecticut on line 1, listening on the radio. Jill, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you so much. Shalom, I'm a Jewish believer, and I've been listening to your show for decades and praying for you and love your perspective of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. I'm also pro-life, so I just wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you, Jill. Appreciate it.
So my question was getting back to, I was wondering why the attempted assassination the assassin wasn't charged with that crime. He got,
it was gun charges.
So, Jill, actually, we talked about this on the show yesterday, that we suspected the reason it was the 2 gun charges where they were very easy to lay out, because he is a convicted felon and he was in possession of a firearm illegally, as well as had the scratch serial number. They could get that indictment returned immediately and keep him in custody. That's what we suspected on the show yesterday. Federal agents have now confirmed that they place those 2 charges immediately so that they can keep him in custody. So he has been charged. He can be kept in custody. It's not just a holding while they do an investigation, but they also said they expect more charges coming. So I think we will see 18 U.S. Code 351, a violation of that, which is includes subsection A, whoever attempts to kill or kidnap any individual designated in subsection A, which includes a major presidential or vice presidential candidate. I expect that charge will be added. So they will definitely bring more charges, according to even the agents in this case, as they do this investigation. But they also are saying they want to do it properly and do the investigation so that they can convict in the court of law, not just rush it.
All right. Thank you, Jill. Continuing on. Jim's calling in Colorado. Jim, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi. My question is why doesn't the Secret Service and other police agencies use canines to patrol areas? They can spot a person in a bush before a human can. They can smell a gun in a crowd.
Yeah. Jim, I mean, my assumption is that they do use these kind of resources. I don't know for sure, but that would be what you would have believed and what I would have believed, that these resources are being used, whether that be dogs, or someone called in earlier about drones. Why are these seemingly basic situations being used or not being used? Well,
and let's go to even the basic point. They didn't use canines. They didn't even sweep the perimeter of the golf course before the round of golf.
That was a moment that did come out of the press conference, which was saying, yeah, we didn't sweep it because he really wasn't, we weren't sure it wasn't on his schedule. But we also know from earlier in the day, because Sean Hannity spoke about this because he was with him earlier in the day, said, yeah, were talking about playing golf all morning. So clearly it was coming. And when you own the course, you may not have to get a tee time.
They didn't sweep the golf course, and I'm thankful for the agent that was ahead of him and saw the gun barrel. That's a great eagle eye to be able to see that gun barrel poking out of the bushes, because if they didn't, that was the next hole that President Trump would be playing.
Different story. All right, let's take one more call for the day. Robert's calling, Colorado. Robert, you're on the air.
Thank you, guys, for letting me speak. And I appreciate you guys a lot, and I do pray for you. And
appreciate it, Robert.
Donated in the past.
I really do appreciate it. I'm going to let you know real quick. We are running really short on time, so just give me your comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any way that Congress can beef up the funds or anything to help Trump have
more security? I'm going to let cut you off because we have one minute left.
Robert, we know that the White House has requested additional budget funds.
That was our first.
And there's also, they could pass a very quick additional funding bill. I think would be a lot easier than getting it through the CR. The problem, though, is what one of the other callers brought up. You know, this is managed by the Department of Homeland Security. I don't have a lot of faith in Alejandro Mayorkas' leadership and them utilizing the proper resources to do the right thing, because they haven't been already for a long time.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for everyone who called in. I encourage you all to support the work of the ACLJ right now. As we head into the end of this show, know that we create incredible content that is put out each and every day. So make sure if you're watching this on one of the many platforms that has us, subscribe. So subscribe if you're on YouTube, subscribe if you're on Rumble, however it is. Follow, share, do what you need to do to make sure you're staying engaged, because we put out new content, not just this 1 hour show. We put out great content throughout the day. Visit ACLJ.org and become an ACLJ champion. When you do that, you become a champion of life, a champion of liberty, a champion of your own freedom. And your first gift is doubled. Talk to you tomorrow.